we're talking about the super viral and now very complicated conversation that's going around about Miss Shirley. You've heard of her. In fact, you've seen her going viral across social media platforms. I'm talking about that little girl with the confidence, the high energy, and that fancy footwork that has grown men and women on social media cheering and dancing along. Oh, people love to watch her dance until they realize where she's dancing, who's watching her, and how her mother Tish is managing the spotlight. Now folks out here dragging Tish for filth. Child Protective Services has been called, and people are accusing her of exploitation, all while Miss Shirley continues to trend on all social media platforms and in real life. But today I got questions. Is this help or is it hate? Are we protecting little Miss Shirley from hurt, harm, or danger? And what does it say about us when a little black girl being confident in her talent brings more outrage than a child being neglected or endangered? Let's discuss it. First, let's talk about what's going on. I'm going to give y'all a real quick breakdown. Miss Shirley is a young 4-year-old dancer who's gone viral for doing that boots on the ground dance. You know, that catchy tune, and that baby is clearly talented. But wait, because there's an issue. Some of her performances have taken place at adult venues. I'm talking lounges, clubs, parking lots, outside of nightlife events, and the audience is full of grown men and women. People aren't just questioning the setting, but also the intent behind it. And now all eyes are on Miss Shirley's mother, who's been filming, sharing, and receiving payments totaling upwards of $500,000 reportedly. And that's just for some of those appearances. All seemed fine until we found out that Miss Shirley's boots on the ground has Mama Tish marching her own boots to the bank. But why are people upset is the question that I have. Some people are saying that it's inappropriate for a child to be dancing around grown men, especially in spaces that aren't meant for children. Some people believe that the style of dancing has sexual undertones. Even if Miss Shirley doesn't understand it, they're saying the adults around her do. And a lot of folks believe the fact that her mom is being paid or receiving bookings for these performances feels like she's exploiting her child. And because all of this is taking place on the internet, we go from zero to CPS calls real quick. But pause right there. Are we angry about Miss Shirley's dancing? Or are we angry about what it reminds us from our own childhood? Because for many black women, especially those who grew up in underprivileged communities, there's a history of being adultified early. Being told to cover up because Uncle Chester's coming over. Being forced to stay in a child's place while grown folks were hypersexualizing your body anyway. Being punished for the way you moved, smiled, or even existed. You know, being too fast. So now when we see a little girl dancing confidently, dressed to the nine, hair and accessories always on point, out here with a fan base, and she's dancing around grown men who's cheering her on and hyping her up. Some of us are not seeing Miss Shirley. We're seeing the version of ourselves that didn't get protected. And that's real, y'all. But the problem with that is projection is not protection. And calling CPS is not the help that we think it is. Let's talk about her mom, Tish, for a second, because the dragon is getting real. People are calling her a pimp, an exploiter, a failed mother, and worse. They're saying she's using her daughter for money, putting her in danger and exposing her to harm. But here's the truth that's harder to admit. Miss Shirley appears to be well-fed, well-groomed, and well-cared for. She doesn't look like a child in distress. That's not what I see when I see her. Not even in some of the behind-the-scene footage that's been shared. She's a toddler who still sucks her thumb and gets held in her mother's arms. She looks like a child with a gift, with a mama who believes in her and a growing platform that she's earned through her talents. And yes, Her mama's getting paid. But when white parents post their kids doing toy reviews on YouTube and making millions, folks call that influencing, even if they're doing it around other grown men, even if they're playing the games with the men. When black mamas do it, suddenly it's child abuse. Call CPS. Can we keep it consistent? That's what I'm asking. Let's pause for a second and let's talk about what happens when you call Child Protective Services, better known as CPS, especially when people are claiming or implying sexual abuse might be involved. Because hear me when I say this, that's not a small accusation. When you put that kind of suspicion on a 4 or 5-year-old child, it triggers a very serious, a very invasive process, even when nothing inappropriate has happened at all. You want to know what that process actually looks like? Well, first there's a forensic interview, which I'm told Miss Shirley actually went through. If CPS suspects sexual abuse, the child is generally required to go through what's called that forensic interview. And this ain't no casual talk. It's a structured, recorded conversation that's conducted by a trained professional, someone who's trained to question kids in a way that avoids leading them. And guess what? It still involves asking that baby questions like, has anyone touched you inappropriately? Do you feel safe at home? Has someone ever made you feel uncomfortable? Even if that baby doesn't understand those words, the conversation still happens. It has to. Can you imagine how scary and confusing that is for a toddler who just wants to dance? And next, there's the medical exam. In a lot of cases, the child is also taken for a sexual abuse medical evaluation. This includes a physical examination of their body, including their genitals, to check for trauma or evidence of abuse. Again, this is done for a reason, to protect the children. Again, this ain't just checking in like a well care visit. It's invasive. It's clinical. And it can have lasting effects on a child's sense of safety and privacy. But when the CPS call is based on projection or social media outrage, not evidence, this process becomes traumatizing, not at all protective. A CPS worker still comes to assess the environment. They're looking for things like signs of neglect or abuse. Are the parents being cooperative, and whether the child is being fed, which we can clearly see that she is. Whether the home is clean, which we've seen to be very neat, clean, and nicely decorated in the videos. And don't act like that's always the case, because we've seen some content creators go live with garbage bags throughout the house, clothes on the floor, and dirty towels hanging in the bathroom while they're dancing and promoting their merch. But depending on the CPS findings, and sometimes depending on bias, they can open a case. They'll monitor the family, or in some cases, initiate removal of the child from the home. Miss Shirley's mother reported that a CPS investigation was conducted and closed, finding no harmful concern, and fortunately, Miss Shirley was not required to undergo that medical exam. Come on, y'all. Can we agree that's a lot to put a family through because people on the internet didn't like a dance video? Listen, if you truly believe that a child's in danger, yes, speak up. But let's not weaponize concern as a cover for our discomfort or biased judgment. Be careful with your concern, though, because the system that you think is just checking could be the same system that ends up traumatizing an innocent child for life. Miss Shirley's not being protected when she's being interrogated. She's being protected when we use discernment and wisdom before pushing her into a system. Now let's be honest about whether a child should be performing in adult spaces. This part is nuanced, and rightfully so. No child should be in a space that's unsafe. They shouldn't be someplace where it's unregulated or surrounded by inappropriate behavior. Period. But was Miss Shirley inside a dark nightclub at midnight grinding on men? No, she wasn't. Was she performing a dance that adults have added meaning to? Probably so. But dancing for her It's energy. It's rhythm and practice dance move that she's dedicated to her memory. Let's not forget that baby's only 4 years old. So we do have to ask, are we judging the child and the mother? Or are we judging the environment that we see them in? Do we even care about changing the environment? Or are we just shaming the mama? Because the way folks have been weaponizing concern in the comments, it's giving help that sounds more like hate. I'm just saying. Calling child protective services should be reserved for real visible harm, not for social media discomfort. Because the truth of the matter is CPS doesn't have the best track record with black families. I'm just saying the quiet part out loud. And if y'all think removing Miss Shirley from her mother is going to save her, you might be missing the point altogether. We don't have to agree with every parenting decision to still root for a black child's safety and success. And if you really want to protect her, start with asking what support her family needs, not how fast you can cancel them. Why does the world love black children when they're entertaining, but the moment they get too loud, too confident, too visible, and too paid, we want to silence them? I'm serious. What's up with that? We'll repost the dance. We'll laugh and share all the memes, and we'll use that same viral music in our reels. But we turn on the child and the parent the moment it stops being cute on our terms. That's not protection, people. That's policing joy based on fears developed from past personal experiences or perceived danger. So what's the real issue with Miss Shirley or her mother, Tish? We have to ask ourselves if we're protecting Miss Shirley or if we're punishing her for being visible, for being confident and black in a world that's never really made space for that level of elevation. Are we concerned for her safety? Are we uncomfortable with how her mother challenges our ideas of what good parenting looks like today? Is this help or is this hate? Is this protection or is it projection? Listen, it's okay to have questions because as you see, I got a lot of them concerning this situation. But it's also okay to feel triggered. I nearly lost it when I heard Miss Shirley had an OnlyFans account. Thankfully, that turned out to be false too. Her mother created a Facebook group called Fans Only. You see how people twist things up to fit a narrative? We can disagree with how Tish is handling her daughter's rising fame, but please, let's be careful that our trauma isn't turning into judgment and that our concern isn't just an attempt to control. If Miss Shirley was being neglected, we'd see it. And if Tish was abusing her, we'd know. Because it's not something you can easily hide when millions of people are watching it. But right now, all I see is a little black girl doing something that she loves with a mama who's showing up for her. It may not be perfect how she's going about it, but she's pouring into her child. She's showing up, y'all. And to me, that looks a lot more like support than exploitation. Now, before I get out of here, we need to talk about dress codes because that's where the conversation takes a slippery turn with Miss Shirley playing dress up in that red dress. And mind you, that video was recorded long before Miss Shirley ever went viral with the boots on the ground dance.
I see everybody asking $1 million question. Who called CPS on Miss Shirley mama? Guilty. I didn't know her mama was going to get on live crashing out afterwards. And quite frankly, I don't give a damn. I'm not even gonna lie, I was already scared for the little girl while she was doing boots on the ground, goddammit. But then I saw that little Johnny Gill put on your red dress and your high heel videos, and nah, man, I picked up my phone immediately.
Still, a lot of folks are saying, why is a child dressed like that? And I can only assume that they're talking about that long red dress Miss Shirley wore when she was playing dress up in her mother's clothes. I can't speak for you ladies, But I played dress up as a little girl growing up. I wore my mother's dress. I wore her heels, her wigs, her jewelry, and I'm pretty sure some of you did too. It made me feel pretty. I could barely walk on my mother's heels, but it made me feel taller, feminine, girly, and as crazy as it may sound, I felt a closer connection to my mother when I played dress up. I thought I looked like her, no matter how ridiculous I actually did look. It was an innocent moment of a child. But when Miss Shirley wore her mother's red dress, folks started saying, oh, she's too grown. And I'm going to just keep it real with y'all. It sounds like people are blaming a 4-year-old for how adults perceive her. Let's talk about that. I agree that children should wear age-appropriate clothing. And when you're only 4 years old, what's really the dress code? If the children's store is selling a size 4T or 5T, can the outfit go against code? Dress codes were never really about decency anyway. Did y'all know that? Dress codes were created to protect girls and women from men, specifically men who couldn't be trusted to control themselves around exposed skin, cleavage, or curves. Instead of holding those men accountable, society started teaching girls to cover up and not distract the boys. That same mindset is what leads people to look at Miss Shirley, a baby, a literal child, and project grown-up sexual meanings onto her presence, her movements, and the toddler-sized outfits that her mom dresses her up in. There's a hard truth behind this. Miss Shirley is not the problem. Grown adults sexualizing a 4-year-old is the problem. Adults. Miss Shirley's not wearing anything inappropriate. She's not doing anything to invite sexual attention either. She's just dancing, y'all. She's being an entertainer, and she's really good at it. If the way a child moves makes you uncomfortable, it's worth asking yourself, is it her? Or is it your own trauma? Maybe you have your own internalized shame. But we have to stop seeing children through the lens of our own wounds and start seeing them through the lens of innocence and protection. And one more thing. If a grown man is watching a 4-year-old child dance and thinking anything other than, wow, she's got talent, he's the danger, not the outfit, and certainly not the child. Let's not confuse our urge to protect children with projecting adult expectations onto them. Let Miss Shirley be a little girl. Let that baby shine. Can we focus our energy on making the world a safer place to be? Because whether you choose to agree with me or not, Miss Shirley is not doing too much. We are.
Let them haters it. Let them haters it. Let them haters hit one time. I'm gonna keep on stepping, baby.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.